First came the Magic Kingdom, then EPCOT, then Disney MGM Studios, and now... Introducing the most adventurous Walt Disney World theme park ever. Disney's Animal Kingdom, the imagination of Disney, gone wild.
Welcome everyone to Destinations Disney and Universal, the channel where we discuss everything about these incredible theme parks. Welcome to the 1990s. Disney's MGM Studios opened in 1989 and was a huge success. Universal Studios opened in 1990 to, let's just say, some very troubled beginnings, making Disney feel as though they had won the competition for theme parks in Orlando, Florida. So, feeling as though he had already addressed one competitor, Michael Eisner, yes folks, this Michael Eisner again, turned his attention to another Florida competitor, Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay. Busch Gardens had seen success with attractions blended with live animals through their Serengeti Plains, which had opened in 1959 and then expanded in 1965. With SeaWorld also existing about an hour away from Disney World, Eisner began investigating the possibility of a theme park with live animals. In the late 80s and early 90s, Eisner sent Imagineers to visit zoos around the United States in order to learn about if and how the concept could work on the scale in which he wanted to create it. What resulted was Disney World's fourth theme park, Animal Kingdom, which opened on Earth Day of 1998 to heavy media attention, large crowd numbers, and a few protesters. So, what struggles did Disney face during the planning and construction of the park? What were the initial ideas of the park, and which of those ideas were included in the final construction? And what key idea was left out despite being advertised on opening day and through the first months of the park's existence? All of those questions will be answered. Plus, we will give you an overview of what the theme park looks like today in this episode of Destinations Discovery Expedition to Disney's Animal Kingdom. Before discussing how Animal Kingdom came about in the 90s, we must first understand Disney's historical desire to include live animals in their theme parks. Walt Disney originally wanted to include live animals in the Jungle Cruise attraction, but the cost was simply too high at that time. Walt instead compromised on creating a series of nature documentaries titled True Life Adventure Films. The series was a huge success, with 8 of the 13 films winning Academy Awards, and many public schools using them in classrooms. Walt was also known to bring in live animals for his animators so they could draw their own imaginative versions which were still based in reality. Such iconic Disney characters like Bambi were created using this method. After Walt's passing, Imagineers experimented with live animals in their parks on a smaller scale. In 1986, Big Thunder Ranch opened at Disneyland, offering a petting zoo, which would last until 2016, when it was replaced with Disneyland's version of Galaxy's Edge. Also in 1986, EPCOT opened its Living Seas Pavilion, which contained the largest saltwater aquarium in the world at that time. The pavilion was a huge success in terms of conservation and care of live animals within a theme park, and it succeeded in providing education about these animals in an entertaining way which guests enjoyed. As stated in the opening, Eisner sent Imagineers to zoos around the country in the late 80s and early 90s. The Imagineers came back with the conclusion that almost every large city in the United States had a zoo which offered affordable educational experiences and could be seen in a few hours or less. The idea of offering a similar experience at Disney's prices and on the scale which Eisner was discussing was completely outlandish. Refusing to abandon the idea, Eisner told the Imagineers to press on and brainstorm the layout of the park. The group of Imagineers grew to 500, and they were continuing to go out and canvass zoos around the country and would recruit expert zoologists to assist with the construction of the park. The original idea was for the park to be 1 part animal exhibit, 1 part rides, and 1 part educational opportunities. However, the final park design saw each of the theme lands having an integration of all 3. Eisner and Vice Chairman Roy E. Disney formally announced the park in 1995 with a media event at the Contemporary Resort, which showcased the original ideas for the park, including dinosaurs, safari vehicles, and a mock-up of the Tree of Life.
We're going to present a wild animal kingdom on 500 acres just west of our north-south road.
The park would be 5 times the size of Magic Kingdom and include over 1,000 animals, many of which were endangered and part of Disney's conservation program. The park opened with many of the same themed areas and attractions that exist today, with the exception of the planned Beastly Kingdom. The original idea of the park was to be a showcase of animals which exist in today's reality, animals which exist in yesterday's reality, and animals which exist in the realm of fantasy.
We're going to combine the real world of animals with the extinct world of animals and with animals from mythology as well.
The Beastly Kingdom would have featured a major thrill ride called Dragon's Tower. The story of the ride was that after a fearsome battle that devastated the original inhabitants, the castle had been overtaken by a massive dragon as its new home. The jewel-encrusted dragon was very much inspired by the villainous Smaug in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series, specifically the story of The Hobbit. Both greedy dragons guarded a vast hoard of untold treasures. The dragon figure was to be the largest and most sophisticated audio animatronic creature ever built up to that time. Inhabiting the nearby caves was to be a colony of bats who were also clever thieves. The bats would whisper to the guests in order to convince them to help the bats rob some of the dragon's riches. Guests would have been strapped into a suspended inverted roller coaster to create the sensation of flying along with the bats on this ill-advised caper in a wild chase through the dark caverns, collapsing ancient castle corridors, and even the fabled gold lair. The climax would have been a confrontation with the fiery-breathing dragon, who was not pleased at the attempt to rob him. The winged dragon would have been the major character icon of the park. McDonald's, a corporate sponsor at the time, even released a Happy Meal toy of a purple winged dragon when the park opened. Even a ticket kiosk at the entrance of the park had the head of a dragon. However, the Beastly Kingdom area was postponed on opening day, and a placeholder area named Camp Mini Mickey was constructed in its place. Camp Mini Mickey held character meet and greets and was the home of the Festival of the Lion King live stage show. However, as the park progressed, the cost of maintaining wild animals caused the budget to soar. Due to those costs, prior to the park's opening, Disney had to decide whether to construct Dinoland USA or the Beastly Kingdom to open with the park. With Disney in the process of making the movie Dinosaur, which would release in 2000, it was decided that they would go with Dinoland USA as opposed to the Beastly Kingdom. As the years went on, construction on Beastly Kingdom was stopped and never completed. Instead, the entire area and the Camp Mini Mickey area were used to construct Pandora, the World of Avatar, which opened on May 27th, 2017. Another attraction, which was originally planned, but ended up being cut due to the park costs, was a roller coaster called the Excavator, which would have been located in Dinoland USA. The coaster would have been similar to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. The theme of the ride would have been that guests were paleontology students traveling to a dangerous dig site. Disney marketing described it as a, quote, rollicking coaster ride through a section of the dig supposedly too dangerous to enter. At one point, the ride would have zoomed through the inside of a dinosaur skeleton. However, Disney felt that Countdown to Extinction would be easier and less expensive to build, while still providing guests with a thrill ride. So, the Excavator was never constructed. Nevertheless, despite going well over budget with a staggering $800 million construction cost, Disney's Animal Kingdom opened on Earth Day in 1998. 28,000 guests visited the park on opening day, along with 5,000 journalists. Broadcasts of Good Morning America, Today, and Live with Regis and Kathy Lee aired from the park on April 22nd. Animal Kingdom was also the most controversial of the Disney parks. Several Florida-based animal rights groups and PETA voiced concerns when the park originally opened, citing Walt Disney World's previous missteps in handling animals at the now defunct Discovery Island. On opening day, the Orange County Sheriff's Office sent about 150 deputies due to the fact that around 24 protesters showed up. The protests lasted 2 hours and there were no arrests. Also, following a U.S. Department of Agriculture inspection of the park, it was revealed that 31 animals died at Animal Kingdom between September of 1997 and April of 1998, mostly due to accidents, poisonings, fights, and other causes. 2 Asian small-clawed otters died after ingesting loquat seeds from trees planted in their exhibit. 2 cheetah cubs also died from ethylene glycol poisoning, and 9 herd animals died due to injuries from fights and being entangled in fences while trying to escape, and also, in one case, being kicked by an ostrich. 2 crowned cranes were killed after being run over by safari vehicles in 2 separate incidents. That being said, the U.S. Department of Agriculture ultimately found no violations of animal welfare regulations. To their credit, though, Disney responded to the report by hiring additional security to prevent animals from fighting, relocating the crown cranes to walking paths, and adding mirrors to the safari vehicles. That being said, the park is extremely popular, with it being the 3rd most visited theme park in North America and the 6th most visited theme park in the world in 2019. The park has obviously been a huge success for the Disney Company, and it is truly one of the most popular and unique theme parks in the world today. Speaking of today, let's take a tour around the park, highlighting some of the best rides and experiences. If you're staying on resort property, the only method of Disney transportation to get to Animal Kingdom is through the Disney Bus Line. After passing through the main gate, guests will arrive at the Oasis. Another important thing to know about the park is that each of the themed areas has what are known as highlighted animals, which are obviously showcased in that part of the park. For the Oasis, these animal highlights are the Babirusa, the Spoonbill, and the Anteater. The Oasis also features the Oasis Exhibits, which is the only path leading to the rest of the park. Disney designed the exhibit this way on purpose in order to put guests in contact with animals immediately upon entering the park and while they are leaving the park in order to leave guests with a lasting impression. The trail has an Eden-like feel, featuring beautiful floral, cooling waterfalls, and calming streams. The animals featured along this trail include the giant anteater, boars, deer, and the spoonbill. There are also various birds flying along the trail. Coming to the end of the trail, guests will arrive at Discovery Island. Discovery Island serves as the main hub of the park, being the central location to access all the other theme lands with the exception of Rafiki's Planet Watch, and features the main icon of the park, the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is 145 feet tall and contains 8,000 branches and 102,000 leaves. It also features 325 carvings of existing and extinct animal species on the trunk. The Tree of Life took Imagineers and artists 18 months to complete. Inside the Tree of Life is a 428-seat theater, which hosts the first attraction of the park, It's Tough to Be a Bug. The queue for this attraction winds around the Tree of Life, where guests can see animal carvings which would not be visible at other vantage points around the park. The short history of this attraction is that Imagineers wanted to place a show inside the park's centerpiece, but could not figure out an acceptable concept that would really mesh with the Tree of Life. That's when Michael Eisner suggested a tie-in with the upcoming Pixar film, A Bug's Life. Real quick, everyone, I just want to take a moment to touch upon the risks which Disney and Eisner took with this park. Specifically, that they based two of the major attractions on upcoming Disney films, those being A Bug's Life with It's Tough to Be a Bug, and Dinosaur, which had the Countdown to Extinction attraction that would later be renamed to simply Dinosaur. The obvious risk here was that Disney was banking on the success of these films before they were even released. Luckily, for It's Tough to Be a Bug, the movie A Bug's Life made $363 million against a budget of $120 million, making the movie a huge success. We will discuss how Dinosaur did when we come to Dinoland USA later in this video. Anyways, back to this attraction. After going through the queue line, guests are seated in a theater. After the theater doors close, an announcer advises the audience not to buzz, sting, pollinate, or chirp during the show. Blick the Ant, an audio animatronic, emerges from a hole in the theater ceiling and welcomes the audience, telling them to put on their bug eyes, which would be their 3D glasses. The show begins with butterflies in formation as curtains flying away. Blick now appears on screen to present the acts of the show after the title card is presented. Jungle music begins to play, and a Mexican red-kneed tarantula known as Chili makes his appearance. A pair of acorn weevils, along with Weevil Knievel, place a slingshot on the stage and launch acorns from it. Chili shoots the first acorn with a quill, but fails to shoot the second due to Weevil holding onto it, who then taunts Chili, who then chases him. Blick presents the second act as a soldier termite who defends his mound by spraying intruders with acid. A piece of the set falls with a rumble and the Terminator steps out, who then shoots at a taunting flea and then the audience. After he runs out of acid and leaves, Blick reappears and hopes the audience isn't allergic to acid. The next act Blick introduces is a stink bug named Claire de Room, who walks onto the stage. The acorn weevils place a flower as a target, and Weevil re-enters the scene and crashes into the flower, causing it to move towards the audience. Claire then passes gas, which affects and disgusts both Weevil and the audience. Then, an explosion is heard as Hopper, a grasshopper in audio animatronic form, appears. He orders a stag beetle to chase Flick off the stage. And 4 wasps hold up an advertisement flyer for Knock 'em Dead exterminators. The wasps turn over the ad and use it as a makeshift movie screen to show movie clips from old monster movies featuring giant bugs. Hopper wants to make humans experience the same medicine, and a giant fly swatter attempts to flatten the audience. After Hopper discovers the audience is still alive, he declares war on them. The screen goes black as a hand appears with a can of bug spray and sprays it at the guests. Hornets sting the audience, and several Black Widow spiders go up and down, trying to capture and scare them. Hopper, now on screen, boasts nothing can stop him, but then a chameleon appears and tries to eat him, making Hopper flee. Flick then reappears and says that he forgot to mention the reptiles, which segues into the finale. Bees, dung beetles, dragonflies, and other bugs sing about how insects help humans and about how it's tough to be a bug. Weevil then returns, holding a moldy cupcake, and the bugs chase after him. The butterflies come back to form a curtain, and Flick reappears in audio animatronic form from the ceiling to wrap up the show. After the theater is lit up again, the announcer requests the guests to remain seated so the beetles, maggots, and cockroaches may exit safely. The bugs start to talk all at once as they exit, which triggers hidden rubber wheels to roll at the bottom of the seats, simulating bugs moving underneath the audience. This attraction is excellent. The 3D effects and storytelling not only entertain guests, but also stay true to the theme of the park, which is centered around educating guests about animals and insects and wildlife, but it does so in a way which is thrilling, fun, and memorable. The attraction has died down in popularity in recent years, especially as time has passed since the film's release, and is usually about a 10-minute wait time. That said, this is still a must-do on every visit to the park. Even if you have never seen the film, the show itself is easy enough to follow and really does not require much knowledge of the film in order to understand and enjoy. As stated before, from Discovery Island, guests can access every other land of the park. For the purposes of this video, we will begin at Dino Land, USA, and then go counterclockwise. To understand this area of the park, it is important to know the backstory which Disney created for this area. The story is that the famous Dino Institute is filled with mischievous students who have taken over a small roadside stop. Next door, the owners of the gas station, Chester and Hester, decided to cash in and create a carnival in their parking lot. So, as you can imagine from that description, this area mainly serves as a kiddie land of sorts, holding classic American carnival rides themed to dinosaurs, such as Triceratops Spin, which is basically a copy of the Dumbo's Flights attraction in Magic Kingdom. The area also features a dinosaur kiddie playland area called the Boneyard, which is themed to a dinosaur fossil dig site. Dino Zoo is a life-size replica of the largest Tyrannosaurus rex fossil ever discovered, named after the archaeologist who discovered the fossil, Sue Hendrickson. The Cretaceous Trail is a walkthrough garden which showcases plant life dating back to the Cretaceous period, as well as the animal highlight of this area, the American crocodile. A new show debuted in this area of the park for the 50th anniversary celebration. Kite Tales sees kites and wind watchers dance through the air to the beat of Disney songs, featuring elaborate three-dimensional kites of Simba, Zazu, and more. Since the show debuted on October 1st, I have not personally watched it, so I will have to reserve my review of the show until I do. The major thrill ride in this area is Dinosaur. Formerly called Countdown to Extinction, it is a dark EMV ride which sees guests travel back in time to just before the mass extinction event of the dinosaurs in order to rescue an iguanodon. Following two pre-shows, guests enter an underground research facility where the Time Rover will pick them up. Once the riders get on, they pull up forward for a seatbelt check. They then proceed to a testing zone where they are transported to prehistoric times. When they land, guests can smell the forest and trees around them while they come across various dinosaurs from the era. Seeker, their driver, then locks onto the signal of the tracker, and the ride becomes much bumpier. The scanner built into the rover picks up a big dinosaur, and Seeker thinks that it's the iguanodon. He pulls the rover to a stop, but finds out that the dinosaur is actually a Carnotaurus. The rover takes off away from the Carnotaurus and finds another big dinosaur with the scanner. The dinosaur is a Celastosaurus, so the rover starts to pull away again, and the timer that counts down to the asteroid, which causes the mass extinction, claims that the asteroid is going to strike in about 90 seconds, causing the rover to pick up the pace. The rover drives down a small hill and dodges a Pterosaur. Now, in almost complete darkness, the rover speeds through the forest and falls down another small hill while losing traction. The Carnotaurus the rider saw before appears in front of them and walks towards the Time Rover. Seeker turns on the four-wheel drive system and successfully gets the rover away just moments before the Carnotaurus can get to the vehicle. The rover performs evasive maneuvers in order to dodge the meteors in the darkness. After successfully dodging the meteors, the rover then stumbles upon the Carnotaurus again, which tries to lunge at them. This is where the ride photo is taken, and the rover takes off again into a small section of the forest where some of the trees are falling down. The scanner finds the iguanodon, but Seeker decides to abort the mission and bring the rover back, just as the asteroid is about to strike. a tree was about to fall on the rover, but the iguanodon catches a tree and the rover proceeds. The asteroid strikes the ground and creates a flash of light, and the Carnotaurus is seen giving one last lunge. However, at the last second, the rover transports back to the Institute, and somehow the iguanodon came with them. The rover then proceeds to the loading station where guests get off and proceed to the gift shop. This ride is, I would say, okay. I mean, it's fun enough, it's fair enough, but it just doesn't rank very high on my list of Disney rides. It's good for what it is. I just feel like it falls short of what you would expect from Disney. The story is okay but predictable. The effects are serviceable but nothing spectacular. It's just really average. It's also not very popular, and normally you can walk right on to this attraction. Now, remember earlier when I said that Michael Eisner based It's Tough to Be a Bug and this attraction on movies which had not yet been released, which was taking a huge risk. As previously stated, A Bug's Life was a smash hit at the box office. However, the movie which this attraction is based on, Dinosaur, was a film that pretty much flopped. It currently has a 64% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes and has been a lost and forgotten film within the Disney movie library. So, with Dinoland USA as a whole, it's pretty much a skip unless you have little kids. If you want a dinosaur-themed land, Islands of Adventure has one which is way better and is based on a legendary dinosaur-based movie franchise. Walking up the path, the next area which guests will come to is Asia. This was the first major expansion added to the park in 1999 and is set in the fictional kingdom of Anandapur, which means place of many delights in Sanskrit. Essentially, it is a combination of Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Mongolia, Nepal, and Thailand. The land itself is split into two different areas, the riverside village of Anandapur and the Circazong, which is set in the foothills of the Himalayas. The Mahara Jungle Trek takes guests through the Royal Anandapur Forest, where guests can see the highlighted animals of this area of the park. Tigers, bats, gibbons, Komodo dragons, lion-tailed macaw, and various exotic birds. The aviary on this trail features over 50 exotic birds, including king parrots, fruit doves, and Palawan peacock pheasants, just to name a few. Also in Asia is the Yak and Yeti restaurant. It sits right at the start of Asia, and the story of the restaurant is that a rich merchant has fallen on hard times and decided to turn his home into a hotel. The hotel is the kind of boutique that wealthier adventure travelers might seek out in India. While travelers rest at the hotel, the owner and other families reside there. The decor, as well as the furniture, at Yak and Yeti is a hodgepodge of mismatched artifacts Arjun has collected through his years of travel in Southeast Asia. The restaurant itself features traditional Asian cuisine and has garnered excellent reviews, averaging 4.5 stars on most dining review websites. The food is pricey at an average of about $21 per plate, but people rave that the food is excellent and well worth the price. I would recommend dining at this location if you can afford to do so and are looking for a sit-down restaurant, of which Yak and Yeti is one of the few options of that available in the park. There are two major attractions in Asia. The first is a rafting expedition along the Chakarandi River called Kali River Rapids. The queue winds through temples and shops, passing by ancient, decaying statues, shrines, overgrown ruins, and lush landscapes, ending in the rafting offices for Kali Rapids expeditions. In keeping with the ride's theme of being against illegal logging, chainsaws can be heard in the forest near the queue. Inside the rafting offices, visitors pass a television screen on which the proprietor of Kali Rapids Expeditions explains their company's mission: to show visitors the natural beauty of the area and demonstrate that there are non-destructive ways to bring revenue to their village. Just before reaching the loading area, a radio transmission warns that illegal loggers have moved dangerously close to the river. Riders are then loaded on a rafting platform in 12-person rafts. The rafts have nicknames such as Himalayan Hummer, Sherpa Surfer, and others. As the rafts leave the dock, riders begin their adventure on the Chakarandi River, first ascending a 90-foot lift hill through jasmine and ginger-scented mist. Once at the top, the raft flows through the path of gushing geysers, past a waterfall and rock formation that forms the face of a tiger, and on through a dense tropical jungle where countless animal and bird calls can be heard. The water becomes choppier, and riders hear the sound of chainsaws and the smell of smoke. Around the bend, the lush vegetation gives way to charred tree stumps and a fully loaded logging truck, which has slid perilously into the river as it tries in vain to drive itself out. Moving further into a gargantuan pile of charred tree trunks, the raft passes through a flaming bridge of felled wood and then plummets down a 30-foot slide, soaking everyone in the resulting waves. Careening down the rapids, the raft passes waterfalls, cascading down a granite rock face, before spinning and bumping its way along the white water. Passing through a cave, riders are dampened further by dripping water and by statues of water carriers which spray water jets. Finally, the raft passes beneath a wooden bridge and past statues of elephants which also shoot water. These jets are controlled by park guests standing on the bridge. At this point, the raft returns to the loading pagoda and riders disembark. This ride is excellent. It is perfect for thrill seekers and just for anyone wanting to be cooled down from the hot Florida sun. The theming is amazing, and it succeeds in staying true to the park's message of conservation and environmental protection without boring guests with that message. It educates guests in a way which is fun and thrilling. I was so disappointed on my last visit that this ride was down for refurb because it's probably my third or fourth favorite attraction at the park. Needless to say, this is an absolute must ride on every visit to the park. The other attraction in Asia is the best roller coaster at the park and the tallest attraction in all of Disney World, Expedition Everest, Legend of the Forbidden Mountain. The theme of this coaster is around how the legendary Yeti has been protecting the Forbidden Mountain next to Mount Everest. Prior to Hagrid's Magical Creatures motorbike adventure over at Islands of Adventure, this was the most expensive roller coaster in the world, costing Disney around $100 million to bring the Yeti and the Forbidden Mountain to life. The queue starts at the office of the fictional Himalayan Escapes travel agency, then progresses to a replica temple with little holy figures. Visitors next enter a tea garden, followed by a room with equipment from a successful expedition, and then the Yeti Museum, which contains information on the Yeti and a molding of a Yeti footprint. There are also about 8,000 artifacts brought from the Nepal trip in the museum. The riders board the roller coaster in the model village of Surgazong to begin a speedy route through the Himalayas and the base of Mount Everest. The train departs the station to the right and climbs a small lift leading to a short drop. Then, it circles around to the 118-foot lift hill, carrying the riders into the mountain. On the way up, it passes through a ransacked temple with murals of the Yeti, warning the riders that the mountain is his territory. A noise can also be heard during this lift hill, foreshadowing the Yeti. At the top of the mountain, the train curves around the main peak and goes through a cave. When it emerges, it draws to a halt in front of a track that has been torn apart, presumably by the Yeti. To the left of the broken tracks is a secret bird animatronic sitting on a stick. The train itself is held in place by a series of rubber tires, while an automatic switch rotates the piece of track directly behind the train. The train then rolls backwards along a new route that spirals down through the mountain. It eventually comes to a halt in a large cave where riders see the Yeti's shadow on the wall as he tears up more of the track. This effect distracts riders from noticing that another automatic track switch in front of them has been switched. As the shadow moves away, the train rolls forward out of the mountain, going past the on-ride camera and plunging down the 80-foot drop. It enters a 250-degree turn and then speeds back up, going through another cave in the mountain where the roars of the Yeti are heard once more. The train exits from the rear of the mountain and enters a large helix before being lifted back into the mountain one final time. The train drops through a cave where the Yeti is reaching toward it. On reaching the bottom of this drop, riders return to the unloading dock and depart into a gift shop. The total ride lasts 2 minutes and 50 seconds. The ride originally had a full-size and moving animatronic of the Yeti, as opposed to the strobe light effect, which simply simulates the Yeti's movement. The animatronic stands 25 feet tall and could move 5 feet when the attraction first opened. It is speculated that the problem was caused by damage to the Yeti's concrete-based structure, which is unlikely to be repaired until a major refurbishment of the ride occurs in the distant future. Joe Rohde, the Imagineer in charge of building the attraction and in charge of building Animal Kingdom, was asked about the Yeti at the 2013 D23 Expo. Rohde responded, "You have to understand, it's a giant, complicated machine sitting on top of like a 46-foot tall tower in the middle of a finished building. So it's really hard to fix, but we are working on it. And we continue to work on it. We have tried several things. None of them quite get to the key of the problem." Nevertheless, even without the animatronic actually moving, this is still an absolute must-ride. The theming of the mountain shows the true genius of Disney Imagineering, and the way the coaster moves forwards and backwards while telling a fascinating story of an attempt to survive an attack from the legendary creature is absolutely incredible. And if you like speed, this coaster has it, traveling at 50 miles per hour, making riders face 3.0 G-force. Normally, I'm someone who loves corkscrews and inversions on roller coasters, but this one is an exception because the theming and track layout offset the need for any of that. It's absolutely incredible, and make sure you don't miss this coaster on your next visit to the park. Leaving Asia, guess will next arrive in Africa. Set in the fictional African port of Harambe, it contains the most animal-based exhibits of any land in the park. There are 2 trails in Africa, both of which feature the highlighted animals in this part of the park: the elephant, the lion, the gorilla, the hippopotamus, the giraffe, the Columbus monkey, the okapi, African tarantula, and the goat. The first of these trails is Gorilla Falls, which is a walkthrough of a tropical rainforest full of gorillas, hippos, and exotic birds. The second trail is a paid experience called Wild Africa Trek, which is a 3-hour guided trek through the African wilderness and savannas. At a cost of $189 to $249 per person, the tour is quite pricey as far as additional Disney experiences are concerned. Africa is also home to the Festival of the Lion King, which is a Broadway caliber version of the hit film. It uses songs, dance, puppetry, and visual effects to create an African savanna filled with lions, elephants, giraffes, birds, zebras, and gazelles. It also features award-winning music from the movie, written by Elton John and Tim Rice. It is the longest running attraction at the park. It is an amazing show, which unfortunately has been closed due to a dispute between the Actors Equity Association and Disney World. Africa is also home to one of the best animal-based attractions you will find anywhere in the world. Kilimanjaro Safaris is a 22-minute attraction which takes guests through the African savannas, where guests can see elephants, lions, zebras, gazelles, and many more African animals roaming around their natural habitats with no enclosures, meaning that the animals are right in front of the ride vehicle. The attraction used to have a theme story of guests trying to capture poachers. However, this was discontinued in favor of a casual ride around the savannas, which, in my opinion, was a good decision because the beauty of the animals should be the focus of this attraction, and that shouldn't be distracted by a story about poachers. This is an obvious must-ride on every visit to the park. Otherwise, if not to see animals, why else would you go to Animal Kingdom? Rafiki's Planet Watch is another themed area of the park, which is only accessible through Africa, unlike the other lands of the park, which can be accessed from Discovery Island. In order to access this area, guests board a Wildlife Express train. The area is broken up into 3 subsections. Habitat is where guests can see cotton-top tamarins, which are an endangered primate. Conservation Station showcases various conservation efforts supported by the Walt Disney Company and gives guests a behind-the-scenes glimpse of animal care facilities, including a veterinary examination room which has a 2-way communication system so guests can ask the veterinary staff all their questions. The last subsection is affection section, which is a petting zoo featuring goats, cattle, donkeys, and other domestic farm animals. Overall, I would say that Africa is an absolute must-see land, and Rafiki's Planet Watch is possibly a skip. I mean, it's interesting enough, and it does provide a lot of education about animal conservation, but aside from that, I just feel that there are other lands in the park which are more worth your time. This now brings us to the newest and last area of the park, Pandora, the World of Avatar. Opening in 2017, the 12-acre area takes place a generation after the events of the Avatar films. This was originally the site of Camp Mini Mickey and the earmarked site for the Beastly Kingdom, which, as mentioned earlier in this video, was deep in the planning stages, but never came to fruition. A major visual feature of Pandora is the Valley of Moora, complete with its floating mountain ranges. The 156-foot tall mountain employ forced perspective to appear larger than they physically are, and are held aloft by steel beams concealed with rockwork and vinery. Designers were sent to Zhangjiajie National Forest Park to study the jagged pillar peaks of the Wolingyan region for inspiration, as well as foliage studies in Hawaii. The steel foundations for the floating mountains required a year to complete. Pandora's bioluminescent species of flora are also found throughout the area. Imagineers created 20 species of Pandoran flora exclusively for the land. The landscaping consists of real earth plant species mixed with sculpted Pandora flora, with each alien plant requiring its own concealed control box in order to create the necessary amount of illumination and bioluminescence during the evening hours of the park. New motion sensor technology developed by Disney Research allows a plant life to respond to tactical interaction from guests. Audio recordings of Pandoran animals create ambient noise throughout the land. Pandora hosts 2 attractions. Navi River Journey is a boat-based dark ride. Guests take a journey through the sacred Caspian River into a colorful rainforest. After a Navi scout greets guests on the shore, the boat passes by viper wolves and hexapedes with wood sprites, panopyra, and fan lizards floating up into the canopies. After passing under leaves that creatures above are hopping between, the boat comes across a Na'vi tribe and their dire horses walking to a great ceremonial site. Passing by a waterfall, we finally see the shaman of songs leading the Na'vi into a musical celebration of their bond with Iwa. After this encounter, the boats enter a cave with various offerings and return to the loading docks. Overall, this ride is okay. The animatronics are incredibly and extremely realistic. Seeing these is a huge reason why you should check this ride out. But if you're not much into that, or if you're not a fan of the Avatar movie franchise, then this ride is probably a skip. Now we come to easily the best attraction in the entire park, Avatar Flight of Passage. The Flight of Passage queue is one of the longest and most detailed queue lines in all of Walt Disney World. It is said to hold 2 to 3 hours worth of guests and contains multiple scenes for guests to enjoy. The first scene is set by a short overflow queue that has guests pass by a scene layered with detail equally natural and alien. Outdoor kinetics are provided by a waterfall that starts at the top of the mountains in the distance and works its way into a small pond. Once the sun sets, the mountains and plants come alive, providing another naturally beautiful setting. A winding outdoor path leads guests to a cave system which contains paintings from the Na'vi culture. The caves eventually give way for a more industrial setting. A breach of the airlock has caused plants of all kinds to take over a portion of the facility. Young banshees can also be heard in this section as you make your way up into a part of the research facility which is still functioning. Walking through the research site, we are treated to some of the nighttime scenes we could see outside. One of the nice things about this attraction is that the queue allows guests to experience some of the bioluminescence that they might not be able to experience in the land if they don't stay past sunset. After a gradual incline, guests will arrive at the research facility. It's in this research facility where guests come face to face with an avatar. This isn't a captured Na'vi, but rather a clone that we will later sync up with to be able to fly on the back of a banshee. Unless you have watched the movies, the whole process of linking up hasn't been explained yet, so many guests think that this might be a captured Na'vi. It'll all be explained as the queue line goes on. Making your way through the lab, guests find one last cavernous room that shows the massive navigational tracking screen used by the Pandora Conservation Initiative as they track riders flying across the moon of Pandora. Past this room is a theater where you'll be linked to an avatar and take flight over the moon of Pandora. Guests arrive at the link chamber, which is the start of the pre-show that explains everything about the story of the movie franchise, including what an avatar is. Once you enter the boarding room, you can place all of your belongings in a bin on the wall, and before you are a row of chairs which somewhat resemble motorcycle seats. You sit in the seat corresponding to the number you were given prior to entering the room and slide all the way forward against a chest pad. The restraints come up from behind you to lock you in place. As you wait for the ride to begin, you can see your avatar on a display in front of you, and you can feel tingling sensations occur on your chest as the linking process begins. Guests put on their 3D glasses, which they were given in the queue, and the metal wall in front of them becomes lost in pitch blackness, and strobes start flashing as you link to your avatar. Then, with as much suddenness as a finger snap, the world opens up and you are riding on the back of a banshee, thousands of feet in the sky above Pandora. The entire row of seats moves in sync with the movements shown on the enormous screen. The phenomenal computer graphic imaging and the ride technology perfectly blend together, helping to bring the world of Avatar to life. You then fly around various vistas of the planet, including caves, treetops, valleys, a beach, and much more. The final drop over the side of a cliff feels like a small drop on a roller coaster. Every environment also has a natural scent, which guests also experience. The 4.5-minute attraction ends with a view of the sunset over the ocean. This ride truly cannot be described in words. Think Soarin' over in EPCOT, but so much better. It is phenomenal. The animation is very realistic. The syncing of the ride vehicle with what is happening on screen, combined with the best 3D you will ever experience, and the various smells, make this one of the most immersive rides I have ever been on. This ride alone is worth the price of admission to the park. It's that amazing. Obviously, needless to say, this is an absolute must-ride and is one of the best attractions Disney has ever created. Make sure you do not miss this attraction on your next visit to the park. And that brings us to the end of the video. Animal Kingdom was part of Michael Eisner's Disney decade of the 90s and has become one of the most successful theme parks Disney has ever created. While it does have some low points, such as Dinoland USA, the ability to see animals in a way that no zoo on Earth can show them, combined with excellent rides like Expedition Everest and Flight of Passage, make this an incredible theme park which provides both educational information about conservation and thrilling experiences. While Animal Kingdom is not my favorite Disney park, it is one that I make sure I visit during my Disney World vacations. It provides more than enough fun to use a park ticket for, as opposed to maybe using that ticket to go to another park a second time. The animals are beautiful, and you will not get this close to lions, tigers, zebras, or other animals out in the open like you do at Animal Kingdom at any zoo in the world. If you're going to Disney World, make sure that you visit this zoological theme park. With that said, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, you have to watch these videos too. Thank you for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.